From the East and the West, you've heard others, but now you've tuned into the best. This is a Prime Wave Media production.
What's up, world? It's the one and only Pop DBIC, the Primetime Capper. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. And it is time for the premier sports betting show, the PrimeTimeAngles. So I was supposed to have my man Mike Abadir here with me today, but Mike is actually still in traffic right now. So he'll be joining us in probably the next 10 to 15 minutes. So we are going to have him coming in. And if Mike's here, we're going to talk baseball. So, he'll be here in a moment, but let's go ahead and get into some breaking news right away. And that's going to be this. That's going to be Cal, Stanford, and SMU have been accepted to the ACC. And that is absolutely tremendous news because they were very adamant about joining the ACC as well, too. Well, at least Stanford and SMU were, because crazy part about Stanford and SMU is that they were willing to pay their way into the ACC. That's how bad they wanted to be a part of the Atlantic Coast Conference. And I know why they did that, because these are two teams that did not want to get left out of the power conferences. It didn't matter about getting a TV deal. It didn't matter about getting money from said TV deals, and, just showing the network, showing the conference that you're willing to go ahead and not get the gifts and the rewards that the other schools have got, so you can join this conference, so then you can get yourself situated with this conference right away. Stanford and Cal did not want to mull going to the Mountain West. They know that their school is way too big to be in that conference. Also, it would have been a really tough spot for them to go independent, because if they would have went independent, Stanford and Cal, it would have really ruined their way of recruiting, because they're recruiting smart guys to come to their schools, you know what I mean, but they can be a little talented as well. So it's already a tough bag to get into Stanford or Cal, so you have to make sure that you have the right type of players. And, when you have these 5-star players who are really exceptionally smart, they still will want to go to a school that's going to be competitive and possibly give them an opportunity at the NFL. Even though everybody's not thinking about the NFL and look at it somewhat as a bonus, when they make it. But there's a lot of people who go play college football. First thing on their mind is making the NFL, especially when you're playing in major college football. And you can just see it. But SMU is a team that is finally back to where they want to be. This team took almost 30 years to get back to prominence. And the best thing that ever happened to them was going to the AAC. Okay. They were in the Conference USA for a long time, and they were very irrelevant when they were in the Conference USA. They were seen as a real doormat, and they really couldn't recruit anybody because they just couldn't recruit anybody. They had like a 10-year ban on actual recruiting and bringing in actual really good players. And so now they had to literally rebuild their program from scratch. And it took about 30 years to get back into prominence. Now they feel like they're fielding good enough teams to compete with the big boys. And by getting turned away by the Big 12, to where you couldn't go with Houston and you couldn't go with Cincinnati, teams that you formed rivalries with in the AAC, instead of hanging out in the AAC with Memphis, you said, you know what, we're moving on to the ACC, because SMU's made themselves a very efficient basketball team. They were they were the best team in the AAC for years when Larry Brown was their coach. Also, the Texas football coming to the ACC for the first time ever. It's just epic. You're getting a Texas school and 2 California schools. The ACC should be ecstatic about this. And I'm ecstatic about this. I know it sounds crazy, but I told you guys earlier on Twitter I was going to explain why this is an awesome situation, because it gives us the bi-coastal feel that we've always desired. We've always looked forward to a big game between UCLA and Ohio State, or UCLA and Michigan, or USC and Michigan, or USC and Ohio State, or USC and Nebraska, or USC and Wisconsin. And the list goes on and on. And then, it's going to be awesome when you see a Stanford Duke basketball game and it really means something. A Cal North Carolina game that really means something. And these teams have played each other a ton in the past, and they have made out for some great games, both all those universities. And then say you add in a good East Coast, West Coast battle between Stanford and Syracuse. And then, add in something like, Cal and Florida State. That will be a lot. That's going to be a lot of fun. You got Cal going against Florida, and it's just going to be fun because I know people are looking at the traveling, they're looking at the matchups and everything like that. But now we're in a situation where the money that's getting spent in college sports, the travel arrangements are not much, because the networks are taking care of everything for you. And literally you're giving your players the experience that they need to prepare themselves for the professional level, because now the student athlete idea has pretty much left college sports. Let's keep it real. And I know a lot of people want to hang on to that old thing, tradition. But when you said you wanted to have tournaments instead of bowl games, you want to have playoffs. I mean, instead of bowl games, you want to have Sunday football games for Labor Day weekend. All this stuff. What happens is that now we have to make sure that we put it together to where it's more competitive. These conferences weren't competitive when you got 5 teams at the top that just keep running the conference. No, you need to have some parity. And when you bring in a Cal, a Stanford, and SMU, you're going to get the parity that you need. When you have UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington go over to the Big Ten, you're going to get the parity that you need. Big 12, same situation. You got Utah, Colorado, and both the Arizona schools over there. When you get down to the nitty-gritty of everything, that's going to make that conference that much better because you're bringing so much parity. So you guys get my point. I know that the Pac-12 is dissolving, and it's a sad, sad situation. But the Pac-12 did not want to come into the future. They wanted to keep things the way it was, and they thought that they were going to be able to keep moving forward because they had brand names. And when those brand names decided to leave, then everybody pretty much walked away from the Pac-12, because at the end of the day, it was the Pac-12, but the conference was ran by USC and UCLA. It's that simple. Pretty much every big event was always in Los Angeles. Every time they had a meeting, it was in Los Angeles. So, when you lose the heartbeat of the conference, it's going to be tough to recover. And we thought the Big 12 was going to actually be a burden of this with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, but that actually boosted the conference even more. They wound up adding now 8 teams, because when Texas and Oklahoma said they were leaving, it was going to put them back down to being the Big 8 again. But they knew they had expansion coming once they lost those 2 teams. And they were able to add the best 3 teams from the AAC, and then they were able to add one of the better independents in the nation, in BYU, and then they add in 4 middling, Utah is not middling, but 3 middling Pac-12 teams and a top Pac-12 team. And so pretty much what they did was they made a whole new conference within their conference. So the way we can see how this sets up once Texas and Oklahoma leaves, you have the original Big 12 and then you have the new Big 12. And it's going to be two different split divisions. And that's how they work. You have 8 teams to each division and it'll work beautifully. I promise you, it's going to work out fine because it's not going to be as much travel as everybody hypes it up to be. You know what I mean? When you look at it, you can name one conference the National Conference, and you can name the other conference the American Conference. And that's pretty much what it's going to be. Even though one of the leagues is just pretty much going to be all Texas schools. So, it is what it is. But all in all, the topic, SMU, Stanford, and Cal, all are very happy today that they were able to get this done and move on to a conference that did want them, in a conference that is one of the premier conferences in the nation, and a conference that really does need it truly does need the boost that they're bringing to the table for the ACC, because the ACC was really about to be looking pretty bad if they weren't going to be able to get anybody to come to their conference. But we have to remember, a decade ago, they literally heisted the Big East, and this is almost the same exact thing that happened to the Big East. So it is what it is at the end of the day, and we move forward from there. And pretty much, let's go ahead and jump into our next topic, and that's going to be this. It's going to be a pretty good one as well. I talked about the AFC West yesterday. I talked about the Raiders yesterday. And see, Mike's supposed to be on the show, so I brought up Raiders so me and Mike could talk Raiders right now. And, literally now we're going to talk Raiders, but I'm not going to sit too long on the Raiders because, the Raiders situation is very, I would say, kind of annoying. You know what I mean? I think the Raiders are a team that really are not understanding how their fan base is not satisfied with what's going on. You know what I mean? They just keep going about things as if it's okay and as if they're building something here, and they're really not building anything. All they're doing is really pretty much trying to, make a profit, something that it was hard to do in Oakland, because if you didn't have a good team, you have people show up, but you got to sell the tickets for half off. So pretty much, you were dealing with that. And then when the team does become good, you start asking for a new stadium. Nobody wants to get you a new stadium, and people start complaining about the hike on ticket prices. And now they're in a stadium where the prices are the most expensive in the NFL, and it's pretty much a tourist spot. It's not a real big city. So pretty much the Raiders now are a novelty team. They're like a Vegas stage act, and it's absolutely kind of embarrassing. You know what I mean? And not kind of, it is embarrassing, straight up. You know what I mean? And the Raiders are going to really have to do much better as a franchise this year. They're going to have to really take this thing a lot more seriously, because I truly do feel that all what Mark Davis is trying to do is just be Mr. Popular in Las Vegas and show that, he has some money, and, he can do this without his dad helping him, or without the city of Oakland having his back. He got this. He can take care of his business. But his focuses are starting to go everywhere. It's not just about the Raiders anymore. You got the Aces now, and they're playing better, much better than the Raiders are. So your attention's starting to kind of lean over there. But that league is not. That league is just like the Raiders. It's a novelty league. It's something that they're doing so they can appease a certain party. And I know that sounds really messed up, but that's the truth. So pretty much the Raiders are a team with no leader, and they're just coasting and they're going through the motions. And I say this because their coach is an absolute egotist, and he's an absolute, he's a dictator, and and that does not work in college, and that does not work in the NFL. That works in college football, but that doesn't work in the NFL. And I truly do think that Josh McDaniels is a guy that is probably going to get fired again mid-season, because the Raiders have higher expectations than they did last year, because they complained that Derek Carr was the reason why they couldn't do what they truly wanted to do. And Mark Davis did go ahead and hear them out and then bench Derek Carr after that, and then pretty much release Derek Carr after that. And it's really always came back down to the money that they were spending on him, and the fact that he didn't want to give up that he didn't want to do a pay cut. It wasn't that he didn't want, and I wouldn't say he didn't want to do a pay cut. He just didn't want to do a pay cut for that coach. And I think that he thought that he was going to win out, and he didn't. And that's exactly because the loyalty that Mark said he had for his guys, that's what they're playing off of, is that we thought you were loyal, Mark. We thought you liked us. You thought that at the end of the day, if you got to appease certain people, you're not worried about all that. So the Raiders are really in a spot right now where they have to look at the writing on the wall and tell themselves that this is just not what we envisioned to be, and how are we going to fix this thing, and how are we going to bring in the right players to move us forward on being a great team. That's the biggest gripe that you have as a Raider fan, and as you have as a Raider. And when you look into exactly what this season can be about, it can be a great season if they can play like they did in preseason, but that never happens ever for any team, really. And when you play so good in preseason, usually you're going to be playing pretty bad during the regular season, because those guys are guys that you're going to have to cut because you don't have enough space on your roster anyway. But they're trying really hard to make the team because they know that this is a bad team, and they know that if they can do something impressive, they'll probably get a roster spot. And pretty much that's the way that I evaluated the Raiders preseason. So pretty much they did a good job. They showed a lot of confidence, but still, it's a lot of work to do for the Raiders. They have a week. This week off was probably something that was very needed. And you know what? They do get a week one game that puts them in a favorable position against a Broncos team they've beat for the last 5 out of 6 times. They have really dominated the Broncos since moving to Las Vegas. So they haven't had any issues with them. So pretty much they're back on the hunt, and they're trying to keep that streak going against the Broncos. But I know it's going to be tough because you got Sean Payton as the head coach, and Sean Payton's looking to impress his first game out. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it shakes out. But we'll have some more Raider talk next week. And I know me and Mike will talk about it when we do our show on Thursday as well, too. So pretty much with that, let's go ahead and move forward. And this is where Mike was supposed to be coming into the show. So let's go ahead and talk about the AL Pennant Race real quick. And the AL Pennant Race is looking really, really wide open. I'm gonna be honest with you. And I know you guys say pennant because we got divisions and stuff, but still, it's a pennant that they win when it's time to win. So, we have. I'm hitting right now. All right, so pretty much the AL pennant is gonna be a very, very fun race when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it, because you have a real back and forth going between the Orioles and the Rays. The Orioles and the Rays both are two teams that are really, kind of in position that nobody saw them to be in. And now they're sitting up in here sitting pretty and, preparing themselves for what hopefully is a deep playoff run. And that's absolutely insane when you think about it, because I did not have them that high. I thought that they would be some fighters and they would probably be some spoilers sometimes, but I thought it was going to be a good old fashioned Boston Yankees duel to who's going to win the AL East this year. And Toronto was going to be right behind either one of them. Okay, so Mike will be with us in about 10 minutes. So okay, so pretty much. All right, so when I'm looking at this right now, the only race that's really close in the divisions right now are the Guardians and the Twins, and it's crazy because the Twins are really just getting this thing out the way. They're now 5 games ahead of the Indians, and it's like, I mean, the Guardians just aren't winning games. It's what the biggest problem is. They just aren't winning games. And well, pretty much what happens is that the team winds up being very, very stagnant. And this division was always a bad division since the start of the year. But you thought that the White Sox were probably going to be the team. I thought the White Sox were going to be the team at the top. They wind up not even, scratching the surface right now. They're just luckily enough, Kansas City's in the same division too, and they're 12 and a half games ahead of them. So, they have that working in their favor, but they're going to be nowhere near the over win total that I had them at. I think it was at 82. That's not going to happen. They only got 53 wins. Detroit, it's funny because Detroit I think they actually got over the amount of wins I had them having this year. So that's good for them. Good. Kudos for them. And pretty much that's where we're at. The Central is actually the division that is actually the most furthest apart, but for a while it was the closest division. The Guardians and Twins were switching off first place like every day for 3 weeks. So now Minnesota finds themselves 5 games ahead and sitting pretty. Seattle is now in first place, but actually tied for first place. They have the least amount of losses out of them, the Rangers and the Astros. So they're 76 and 57, while the Astros and the Rangers are both 70 the Astros are 77 and 58, and Texas is 75 and 58. So you see where it's at. Texas is a team that led the division by 8-9 games at one point. Now they're a whole game back, and they're in third place. But luckily enough for Texas, they did enough winning, and now they're still in the final wild card spot, up 2.5 games over Toronto. But pretty much the East dominance was pretty much broken because we didn't have because we've had Boston's still killing it, but Boston ran into some issues lately too. They've lost their last 7 out of 10. And then you got the Yankees. The Yankees 65 and 69. They're actually playing better baseball this week, but it doesn't matter. Their season's over. Let's keep it real. They won their last 3 out of 4, but let's keep it real. Their season's over. When the Yankees went on that little losing streak that they had in August, that pretty much was the end. They had lost 10 out of 12. They lost a lot of games last month. They had lost 10 out of 12 at one point. They lost 9 in a row. So it's just bad. The Yankees hadn't lost that many games in 100 years or 150 years. I can't remember, but it was a long time. And so pretty much you have 2 divisions where it's going to be settled in the final week, but I think all 3 divisions are going to be settled in the final week. Cleveland did win the series against Minnesota. They took 2 out of 3, but that wasn't very helpful because they needed a sweep to put themselves a little bit closer. But one thing that works out for them this weekend is this: they get to play against they get to probably the better matchup when it comes to who they're playing over the weekend, in my opinion. And I think that when you have a Cleveland team like this who's coming in here trying to get to back to the promised land, they're going to play hard this weekend. Minnesota has a little bit of breathing room, even though they shouldn't be breathing easy like that. They're going to get to play Texas this weekend, who's reeling. Okay, Texas is playing bad baseball, but Texas will probably step it up this weekend. They're at home. They know this is a playoff type game. It's going to have a playoff type atmosphere to it. So I expect that to be a really good series. But I think that the Twins are actually rolling so well right now that they'll figure it out how to, get themselves ahead in that series. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it shakes out, and we will move forward from there. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the NL Pennant Race. The NL Pennant Race is a little bit more decided. The Braves and the Dodgers pretty much have their divisions sold up, and they're playing each other this weekend. We're going to get into that game in a moment when we get into Blue Crew Daily, but from what I'm seeing tonight, from what I'm seeing right now in the NL, Atlanta's up 14 games over Philadelphia. Philadelphia is still going to the playoffs, though, this year, it looks like. And Philadelphia finds themselves now 7.5 games ahead of Miami. That's incredible because really, you thought the Phillies were possibly going to miss the playoffs this year because that's how bad they were for a moment. But they absolutely stepped it up. They're playing much, 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 much better baseball at this time. And they are, once again, going to be one of the toughest teams in baseball come October because they caught their winning at the right time. They didn't play to be front runners like the Rays and like the Rangers and like the Diamondbacks. They took their time. They knew that the Braves were probably going to be the better team here. They knew that they were going to deal with some adversity because they had Bryce Harper out the first 2 months of the season with his injury. So once they got Bryce Harper back, once they got some other veterans back, and once Trey Turner got comfortable with the Phillies, they took off. Now the Phillies, if you look at their record from when they were 5 games under 500 till now, they're one of the best teams in the league. So that's going to carry into the playoffs. So it should be a pretty fun first round because Philadelphia is not going to be an easy out. And they're going to really make it tough on whoever they play, just like they did last year. Now, the one race that does excite you, even though they fell all the way off, and it's kind of sad how they fell off, but it is what it is. They ain't fall off because they're still in playoff position, but the whole hopes and dreams of them winning the Central, that should be over and done with because the Cincinnati Reds are now 6.5 games out. They've lost their last 6 out of 10. They went over on the total for wins this year. That's awesome. I think I had them for that as well too. I expected that from them this year. And they have pretty much, I won't say hit the wall, but pretty much the realization of who you truly are has set in. And they're a really good, scrappy young team. And they show that they got some great pitching going on over there as well too. And they got a lot of things to look forward to. Can they still make the playoffs? Yeah, they can still make the playoffs. Should they break their necks to do it? No, because the thing is, right now they're 2 games outside of the NL wild card, so they do need to have. They need to be better in series that have to do with getting to the playoffs because it seems like they've had the opportunity to increase their lead in the Central. They weren't able to do so. They played 6 games against the Brewers. They lost 5 of them in a week. So this is where the Reds just aren't ready yet. And that's why I didn't get as excited as everybody else when they were the number one team in the Central. I didn't get that excited when Delhi got there because I knew eventually they were going to catch up with him too. Even though he's still stellar and he's doing a great job and everything like that, we still have to understand that he is absolutely, still a rookie, and you're still dealing with the possible Puig vibes, as I always like to say. So they're sitting in their spot right now. And then you have a very good Cubs team. Cubs, absolute killers right now. Cubs they've been great, man. They got a good win earlier today, and that's increasing this lead. But the Cubs were just a really good team last month, and they were a really good team the month before. Really, because everything started with that 8-game win streak in July, and then that just carried on to August, and they've just played great baseball. They consistently won series. I think possibly they only lost one series this month, and that was early in the month to the Mets. And then once they got out of that, they've been cruising ever since. And they tied a series with the White Sox, but other than that, they won every single series that they were in this month. And then when you count in that 8 in a row that they had almost by the end of the month last month, they are in shape to be another team that's going to be really tough to beat if they can make it to November. They're still they're in the playoffs. They're the second wild card at this point. But they got to hold off the Giants, and they got to hold off the Diamondbacks as well too. And they still got to hold off the Reds. But that win earlier today, winning 6-2, was huge. That's just simple as that. So there's a lot working out for them, and it's crazy because that division was really, really tough for all season. But now it seems like the Brewers have locked in, even though they're only up 2.5 games over the Cubs, and they did lose to the Cubs 2 out of 3 this week as well too. So they finally got somebody to actually beat them, because they turned away the Pirates when they were the number one team. They turned away the Reds when they became the number one team, and the Cubs haven't got there yet, but the Cubs are showing that they can be the tough one out that group. And I told you guys this on 30 teams in 30 days. If the Cubs caught a flow, if they caught a streak, if they caught some confidence, they would be an absolute problem in this division, and they could possibly steal this division. I still didn't have them winning the division because I had the Brewers as the best team winning this division, but I said they were the dark horse to win this division, even over the Cardinals, who everybody just literally handed the division to, and the Cardinals are in last place. So it is what it is at the end of the day. So with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our first commercial break. When I get back, we will jump into the Blue Crew Daily, and we got some more stuff to talk about as well, too. We got MLB Friday Night to talk about as well, so you guys stay tuned, and hopefully we'll have the man himself, Mike Abadir, here with us to go ahead and rap about the tonight's games and to rap about Mookie and Acuna. So you guys stay right where you're at, and I'll be right back to you. And this is the premier sports betting show, the Primetime Angles, with the one and only Pop DiBiase, the Primetime Capper.
Good News Only Racing Club, led by the legendary Doug O'Neill, the trainer of 2 Kentucky Derby winners, and I'll have another in Nyquist. Also trained 2-time Breeders' Cup champ Golden Sense, who are just a part of a long list of thoroughbred champions trained by Doug O'Neill. The Good News Only Racing Club has a young core of horses to look out for in Dennis's Celery, Irish Heatwave, and Notre Dame, just to name a few. Win the day every day with the Good News Only Racing Club, a proud sponsor of the NFL Bet Exchange.
From the East and the West, you've heard others, but now you've tuned into the best. This is a Prime Wave Media production.
Tune into Big Wave Boxing every week with a brand new guest with the one and only Pop DiBiase, the Primetime Capper, getting the best boxing stories, best boxing angles, and the truth when it all comes down to the sweet science. Tune in to Big Wave Boxing on the Prime Wave Media channel on YouTube.
Back, and Mike will be joining us probably in the next few seconds if his phone wants to work. Jump on in and see what happens. But let's go ahead and talk about Blue Crew Daily. Dodgers finish up a month where they finished 24-5 after an 8-7 loss to the Braves last night. What to expect in this possible NLCS over the weekend? What to expect? I would say you need to expect that these two teams are going to be absolutely cooking. They're going to try to really match run for run, bat for bat, strike for strike, ball for ball. It's going to be a good series, man. And I feel like Mookie and Acuna are having a personal battle because last night Acuna hits a no doubt about it grand slam off of Lance Lynn. And then in the next inning, Mookie gets up there and hits a 3-run mega shot over the left center wall on Spencer Strider, who had a hell of a game last night. Strider was out there. I think the Dodgers were about the 30th team, 27th team, or something of that nature that he's pitched against and struck out 9 or better. And it's just this guy's doing some unfathomable things right now. So it's just absolutely nuts the way that situation is going for both these teams this year, how historic both these teams are this season as well, too. So it's just a really, really fun year for Braves fans and Dodger fans because one team kind of had to go through the struggle a little bit a few months back, while the other has kind of coasted and has been able to have their way all year long. And that's deserving because the Braves have played consistent baseball all year. They're playing just like how the Dodgers did last year when they won 111 games. So, it's tough to beat them, but the Dodgers are the team that has been their foil this year. Probably the only series that they lost that they didn't want to lose was to the Dodgers in Atlanta, of all places. It wasn't in LA, it was in Atlanta. So this series is starting to turn out to be a pretty epic one because you got to love the fact that they had them play 7 games this year because they're trying to figure out who the tiebreaker is going to be if these guys finish with the same record. So they made sure that they set this series up accordingly this year. They set the series up to the point to where it's a series that's just like just like any other series. Now, let's see if I can add Mike in here. Mike, are you here? Mike, there you go.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, very loudly.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, very loudly.
All right. Is that good or bad?
Huh?
I don't know if there's a setting to turn it down a little bit, but I'm pretty much speaking at a normal voice. Good afternoon, Pop DiBiase. Pleasure to be with you, my friend.
All good, all good. And you breaking up a little bit, but we can hear you very, very well. So how are you doing today, Mike? You look like you just came back from a spend meetings and lunches and stuff.
I'm blessed, but I'm just busy as hell. I'm blessed, can't complain, but I'm in a hotel. And actually, I'm in Southern California. I come for something business-wise. I'm going to show you guys something real fast. I am at the Marriott right by Los Alamitos. So I'm going to turn the phone around. You're going to see the lights for the track. I don't know if you see that or not. Lighting from the racetrack. Maybe it's clear on here, but all those houses that you'll see there, they were airborne. That went from being a golf course to barns, stabling, to stock and he's headed to California horse trade. He's been slicing off pieces
Because his phone's tripping. Well, you guys see what happened. We tried. Let me see. Let's just put a, you know what? We can have Mike on the phone today. I'm gonna call him and we're just gonna have him on the phone. Because I think that'd be better. Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Hey, we just stay on the phone. You don't have to worry about getting on screen. We can just have you on the phone because they can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, but if you are watching, that's cool. But what's called real quick, Mike? What are your thoughts on this Braves Dodgers series for this weekend?
Game 1 was a blast to watch.
Yeah, I was just talking about that. You know, you got Acuna hitting a grand slam, then Mookie comes back in the next inning, hits a 3-run shot. And then, you know, things get a little spicy last night. Dodgers wind up losing by 1. So what was the best takeaway from that game last night? I know Spencer Strider probably was very high on your radar last night because once again, he strikes out 9 or better. And this is about the 27th time the guy's pitched 49 games. It's absolutely incredible. I don't think they've had anybody do that since Cy Young. So what are your thoughts on Strider? What are your thoughts on Acuna? And do you think the Braves can go ahead and beat the Dodgers this weekend? Because you know it wouldn't be an upset beating the Dodgers this weekend. For the first time, 2 games in a row, probably the first time in 10 years, the Dodgers have been the underdog at home 2 nights in a row. At home, Mike, at home with their top 2 pitchers as well, too, in the rotation. Thoughts?
First of all, congratulations to Mr. Ronald Acuna. He got married before the game yesterday. And then he went on to proceed to set a major league record. I think we talked for a moment about it on the show yesterday, Pop. 30 home runs and 60 stolen bases. He's unbelievable. This guy is the real deal. Mookie Betts is the real deal. Both played like MVPs last night, the MVPs that they are. They should almost get co-MVPs, Pop. Strider, you know, he has not experienced a sophomore jinx. I thought maybe he would, but he hasn't, man. He's been every ounce as good. The guy hits 100 consistently, and he locates really well. And he may right now be the best strikeout artists in the bigs. It kind of reminds me of who was dominant. Maybe Max Scherzer in his heyday or Randy Johnson in his heyday. They were like just strikeout kings.
Yeah.
And Strider is that guy right now. And I don't think he's as big as Max Scherzer. Definitely not as big as Big Unit. So I always wonder how long that's going to last. I don't know his height, weight, to be honest with you, but just eyeballing it, you know, he's not as small as Tim Lincecum, but he isn't like Roger Clemens either. So we'll see how long he's able to deliver that type of effort career-wise. Right now, I mean, I you know, between him and Fried, you know, I think you've got pitchers that can do well in the playoffs. And this is kind of like a playoff-like atmosphere, Pop. You know, yesterday's game was one of only 4 on the billing. And packed Dodger Stadium. Dodgers made a really nice comeback. And so I think they made the message pretty loud and clear. You know, you guys aren't going to come in here and whoop up all over us. We're going to fight back until the last out. And so they're going to look to carry that momentum of the comeback, even though it fell short. They're going to try to ride that momentum through today's game. The Braves, on the other hand, are going to be like, hey, you know, we stole one on the road, advantage us. And, you know, at the end of the day, Pop, we're talking about a home field advantage for Atlanta that's pretty significant. And and that's what's on the line here. For the Dodgers, it's significant too. And I'm going to tell you why. A lot of the East Coast teams are really close to each other. So travel's not an issue. You know, Boston going to Baltimore, Boston going to New York, you know, that type of thing. You know, they're all very close to each other. Toronto is all right there. Here, we're talking about going across the country from the ATL to LA. And so being in the comforts of your home for an additional game is big. You want to be home. You know, otherwise you could have a chance to go to Milwaukee, to go to the other side of the coast. So there's a lot on the line with these games. And I understand why the Braves are the favorites, but I would side with the Dodgers at home, just based on their ability to keep throwing guys out there who get outs. You know, look, Lance Lynn has been a great addition, don't you think?
Yeah, it's
he
things like that happen. No worries.
But he's been a really good addition.
Right.
You know, and so he got a bad one out of the way. Okay, so be it. He's had kind of a weird year anyway. But I think that Julio is finding his true self. You know what I mean? Like he's over that hamstring injury. I think he's good to go now.
Yep. A lot of times you just got to get healthy. That's what people have to understand. It's not that you're pitching bad, it's that you're just not healthy. But you're playing through it. And a lot of times when a great player is slumping, it's usually an injury. It's never something mental or that player lost it or something like that. Every player you've ever talked to who said that, you know, had a moment in time where they weren't really good, it's because they were dealing with the injury. You know what I mean? And I think that Julio is a gamer, and Julio was a guy that did not start off with the greatest start either. So he's really worked really hard to become the pitcher that he's became today. You know, because when he was 17 and they were trying to bring him up to pitch, it was an absolute joke. It was like bringing up one of the kids from the Little League World Series to pitch. You know what I mean? So, you know, he's really, really came a long way since that point. And so, you know, you don't worry about Julio tonight in this game. Only thing that you got to worry about as a Dodger fan tonight is how this one ends up, because Mike, you just hit it right on top of the head. I know that you Atlanta seems like a juggernaut, but the one team that actually did make Atlanta really sweat this year, and they actually beat them in a series this year, the Dodgers. The Dodgers beat them in Atlanta for the series. So the Dodgers understood the assignment that the team that they have to direct their energy towards is the Atlanta Braves at the end of the day. And it's just simple as, you know what I mean? So that's it, and that's all. Now, real quick, how do you feel about if this comes down to both these teams having the same record and this series this weekend being the determining factor on who the number one seed is going to be? What are your thoughts on that?
Is the question, what are the determining factors?
Right, because this is the tiebreaker right here. The Dodgers, it's a 2-2 right now. If the Dodgers were to win this series, they would be up 4-3 if they won the series. If you split the series this week, they would be up 4-3.
You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I need to refresh myself a little bit on the MLB tiebreakers, because I don't know if they go to head-to-head first or not, or if they go like conference play or whatever. Like, I would need to familiarize myself with the expanded format. If it is head-to-head, you know, advantage Dodgers. I mean, that would mean that they just need to win, one in the series, and they'll be good to go. Right? So
they need two.
You know,
they would need two. They need a split.
Okay, so they need two. So they need 2 out of 3, right?
Yeah, it's a 4-game.
You know, obviously it's either them or the ATL. I mean, somebody's going to win, you know, 2 out of 3, you know, or if not 3 out of 3. So, yeah, man, that's what mean, look, this matchup is one of those where it's really tough to say that one is definitely better than the other. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Texas and Houston. You know, Houston's got the experience. They're the champs. Texas has the lineup. You know, it's really hard to figure out a winner. You know, Baltimore, on the other hand, I think they're much better than Tampa. Baltimore, I think right now is the better team. They have better young talent from top to bottom of the lineup. I just can't make that kind of separation with the Dodgers and the Braves. It really is going to come down to who's hotter, which team is hotter, this series and in the NLCS, if they were both to get there. I don't see any other teams. The one exception, maybe you can tell me what you think. I think the Phillies are kind of sneaky, Pop. I think the Phillies are kind of sneaky. They're kind of getting into that zone right now.
Well, I'm gonna keep it real with you. And see, Mike, this is why I can't ever get mad at you, Mike. But this is why I'm like, damn it, man. I wish you'd have been here about 15 minutes ago when I literally tried to drag it out too for you. I dragged out that first topic for you. Cal, Stanford, and SMU all going to the ACC. I was dragging that one hard. You know what I mean? So let's get back to it because I made sure I specifically had the pennant race for each league. So let's talk about it. Phillies, I will say this. They are the team that everybody in the NL needs to look out for. This team absolutely is doing the same exact thing they did last year, but they're even better than they were last year. And they did it a lot earlier than they did last year as well, too. And now they got Bryce Harper hitting home runs again. And so pretty much everything's coming into place at the right time. And they got all the motivation in the world when they're sitting 14 and a half games behind the Braves right now. They're 14 and a half games behind the Braves and the number one wild card team. That should go to show you how good this team truly is at this moment. You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of us have to understand that when it comes down to the way that teams set up for seasons in baseball, when I talked about it on your show early in the season, Mike, on our show. And I said that, you know, when you're a front runner, you're going to get yourself in a little bit of trouble, okay? And what happens is that when you hit that wall and that team that's already coming on with nothing but nothing but momentum, you're always going to get caught by them. And the Rays are a great example of that right now. And pretty much they couldn't keep the Orioles off of them because they started way too early. They've been pretty much a 500 team since going 13-0. And it was a good start to the season, but it would have been a better start if they were, say, in the AL or NL Central. But playing in the AL East, the division where everybody had an idea that they could win the title this year, it literally has been, you know, a very, very fun year in the AL East until the Yankees just started losing. And so pretty much it became almost parity for a while there on who was going to catch the Rays. And then it wound up being the Orioles. And the Orioles have worked out so well this year because they haven't got swept. They had, you know what I mean? They'll lose the series, but they haven't got swept. This has been happening for the last 2 years. And this was happening when they were bad too, Mike. So this is just a sign of where that team is at. I think you're on to something when you say that they are the better team when it comes down to them and the Rays. But who's the team with more experience playoff-wise? Who's the team with more experience when it comes down to actually getting through a month like this and locking down your playoff spot? Now, we know the Orioles' playoff spot is locked down. It's legit. They are the number one seed in the division in the league, but they're still trying to hold off the Rays. So it comes down to who wins the AL East, who's going to be the number one team in the clubhouse when it comes down to the American League, and that's a lot of pressure, Mike, in my opinion. I think that the Rays and Orioles being top seeds this year, that's going to be a real big question going into the playoffs, because I've seen how the Orioles have played against the better teams, and they don't play that well. But they've taken care of their business against the middling and bad teams, and that's what you got to do to make the playoffs. But I feel like they really have dominated the AL East, and nobody's talking about it that much. You know what I mean? So what do you think about that?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the Rays, you make a point, because the Rays have, at least as an organization, they definitely have more playoff experience than Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore hasn't been in the playoffs in ages. And if they snuck in one time that I'm not remembering, 6-7 years ago or whatever, there was nobody on this current team that was there.
Early Manny Machado years. Early Manny Machado years when they last time they went to the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's nobody on that roster that is, that was probably like 8-9 years ago. I don't know.
It's whenever they added the extra team. When we went from 4 to 5, where you went from having your 3 division leaders and then 1 wild card team. Then they added the play-in game with the team that was right next to the wild card team.
Can I say something, by the way, about these play-in games that these sports are putting now in
Of course, Mike. Of course. Go ahead.
I don't consider that playoffs.
Yeah, and
it's kind of like in March Madness, that Tuesday beforehand.
Yeah.
That's how I view these play-in games.
I don't think a play-in's needed if I'm 3 games ahead of you. A play-in should only be used if we're tied.
I kind of agree. It's another way for them to sell an isolated game to the networks for a whole shit ton of money. Right? Now you're marketing it as a playoff. It's like the last game of the season, you can't really sell that, in advance, because you don't know if it's going to mean something or not. The game 163, absolutely, you could sell that. And you could sell that for a lot of money. And so that's one thing. The second thing is it gets the fan bases engaged. Rather than a team being out, clearing out their lockers, now they have a chance to go on a run. And you know this just as well as anybody. In playoffs, you could go on a run. When I was a kid, St. Louis Cardinals did it. The Minnesota Twins did it twice. And they beat superior teams. They beat the St. Louis Cardinals when they had Ozzie Smith and Willie McGee and Vince Coleman, and Whitey Herzog was managing, and Jack Clark at first base. And they had a perfect mix of speed and power. That team was built for that stadium, for Busch Fields. It was just like a phenomenal team. But hey, Puckett and company got sizzling hot. We saw it again with the Cardinals. They were barely like 500 most of the year. One of those years with Pujols, and then they went on a crazy good run. You see it kind of often. And then the Nationals, again, they went on a crazy good run. For a while, they were like, so-so. So I guess the point I'm making is you get in somehow, some way, and you go on that run, you never know where you're going to end up, because you could very well end up winning that one game. Maybe you have a better game 1 starter, and that's all it takes, when you're not talking about a series. And then you go into the next, the longer series, and anything happens, man. And I'll tell you what, when you win that 1-game playoff, the excitement it generates and the momentum carries into the next series, right? And you're playing against a team that doesn't have any excitement or momentum, because they've been out for a couple days, and now this is their game 1. And so now you're coming in with kind of an advantage, you know. And once you win that series, that next series, look out, because then they feel that they're unstoppable, you know. And so, and look, that's what the Braves did when they won the World Series a couple years back, right? It's exactly what they did. You know, they weren't supposed to beat the Dodgers then. You know, but this team, they got hot at the right time. And I think we may see that, you know, with one of these teams that maybe sneaks in, if it's the Astros or the Rangers or the Mariners. I mean, it's going to be one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what it's looking like to me. We just
don't you think one of those teams can go on a crazy good run? Pretty easy.
Yeah, I'm looking at the AL. The AL, you know, with no Yankee Red Sox element is going to make it a very wide open race. But I really truly feel like teams like the Astros and Rangers really beat themselves up this year because they've had so many points where they were coasting. And then they run into these really bad spells of streaks. And, you know, you had the Rangers lost, 6, 7 in a row. And then they came back around and lost another 5 in a row because they've lost the last 7 out of 10 consistently. And they pretty much are now a game back. They're the third place team in the and they're the third wild card spot, you know. And so Toronto, as I keep saying, whenever they feel like putting it all together, Toronto is the team that could really foil everybody if they want to, if they can get in. If they can get into this dance, Toronto's dangerous because they have the hitters. And from when you look at their pitching rotation on paper, they got the pitchers too. Because Ryu, Gaussman, Kakishi, all these guys are really good pitchers, Mike. Like those 4 I just named right there, all of them at one point were the top pitchers for their former teams that they were on. Gaussman with the Giants. Ryu was really good with the Dodgers. Barrios was an absolute monster when he was down there in Minnesota, right? Was he in Minnesota or was he in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
No, that's Castillo. That's Castillo who's in Cincinnati. But Barrios was an absolute gem when he was over there. You know, you got Kakishi, who was so good in Seattle when they weren't a good team. He was their best pitcher the season that he was there, and then they let him go. They traded him for assets. That's how good the guy was. He got them assets. So you look at their pitching rotation, it's just like my little conversation about the Twins. That might wind up sneakily being our ALCS if you get the Twins, if both those teams are in. Twins look like they're pretty much a lock to get in because the Guardians are now 5 games behind them, and it just seems really hopeless with Cleveland right now. But when it comes down to Minnesota, it seems like they're getting their confidence at the right time. And if Buxton can be a part of the lineup for the playoffs, they should be in good shape. But Toronto, I'm telling you, Bo Bichette, Vlad Jr., Gary Springer, these are going to be very big names in the playoffs if they make the playoffs. I'm serious, Mike. Like, literally, these guys will probably do exactly what the Phillies did last year and figure out a way to walk themselves into the World Series. I know that sounds crazy right now, but the way that the American League pretty much is opened up, in my opinion, it's anybody's race to win when you think about it. And it's between 7 teams right now. But first and foremost, the Blue Jays have to make up those 2.5 games and get themselves in the playoffs so they can even talk about a playoff. So that's where we're at. And pretty much that's where I feel like you can go. I think that you really have to possibly bet on whoever the biggest odds are in the AL to go to the World Series this year, because that's how I feel about the AL this year. Because the AL just feels like, okay, everybody who's a front runner is going to get popped when we get into the playoff portion of it. And it feels like the Dodgers and the Braves have this thing figured out because they are established teams that have been here the last decade going to the playoffs and going to the ALCS, and not for the Braves so much the last decade, but for the Dodgers. But the last 5 years or so, yes, Atlanta and the Dodgers know exactly how this party works. So there's that, so man, so there it is. Now, Mike, real quick, let's go ahead and talk about the Cubs and the Reds today, game 2. The game 1's already over, and what happened in game 1 is that the Reds lost 6-2, and the Reds are just creeping further and further down the totem pole right now after being the team that everybody felt was going to be those guys, that it was their year, and all that good stuff. They were the feel-good story of the MLB, but now, after losing 5 out of 6 to the Brewers and then pretty much losing 7 out of 9 in a 6-week stretch to the Brewers, pretty much cooked this team for the year, in my opinion. But I still think that, they got a great story going on, and they're still only 2.5 games out of a playoff spot. But now they find themselves 6.5 games out of the lead for the division, and then also in third place. So do you feel like the Reds have hit the proverbial wall?
Put it to you this way, at this point right now, they're 6.5 back from Milwaukee. It doesn't seem like that long ago that they were the division leader. So they've been slipping and slipping and slipping. And the reality of it is this, they've allowed the Diamondbacks to leapfrog them in the standings. And Miami is right behind them. And Miami is kind of the sneaky team that nobody's thinking about. So the 3 teams, 2 out of the 3 teams ahead of them, the Phillies and the Giants, I think they're more experienced and they're better teams at this point in time. So the teams that they're trying to get one final playoff spot, their teams they're competing with are going to be the Cubs. But like you said, Cubs, at least this morning, had game 1 advantage, and they've put a little distance between them and Cincy. I think, what is the differential? 4 games or something like that. And then, so they're competing with the Cubs, Diamondbacks, and Miami. 1 out of 4 is going to make it. Right now, I'm not seeing it with the Reds. I think they had a good run this year. They're really young. I mean, look at all the guys that they've had contribute this year. TJ Friedel and McCain, infielder. What about that guy that just came off the DL, LBI here? It'll come to me in one second. Like, it's not Joey Votto's team anymore. Like, this team, is all about the Ellie De La Cruzes and Christian Encarnacion Stand or whatever his name is. I mean, these guys are young, and they've got a really good future ahead of them. I'll tell you what. How much do you think they wish they still had their ace pitcher, Castillo?
You know what? If they want to have Castillo, they could still have Castillo. The Reds are a franchise that they're not really worried about keeping superstars. They are about developing stars. And I think that they knew that they possibly had a much better long-term with pitching than they did with Castillo there. Because if Castillo is that much of an asset to them, they would have spent the money on Castillo. They literally kicked him out. You know what I mean? But I get what you're saying, Mike. It would be awesome with the way that he's going right now. It would be helpful. But I keep telling everybody exactly the day that the Reds weren't going to make it to me. See, if Hunter Green stays healthy all season, Ashcraft stays healthy all season, then the Reds are in different shape. They're in a different league right now. They're actually up 4.5 games in the division, in my opinion, if those guys were to stay healthy. But those guys got hurt. Once I saw Hunter Green was going to be out for 6 weeks, I said that it's only a matter of time before the Reds start really looking like how they're supposed to really look. And I think the Reds did everything that they possibly could this season, and they went ahead and they did check off goals. They went over their win amount. Their win amount was at, I think, 65. They're at 69 now. And that happened the other day. 63 something. I gotta look it back up. But
Right.
they went over that. So the Reds, man, I'm telling you, it was always gonna probably end like this once they lost Hunter. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, you're making some valid points. I was going to say the guy I was trying to think of spacing out on was Jake Fraley. He's been a really nice surprise, a combination of speed and power, drives in a lot of runs. But here's one interesting thing I will drop on you. I thought it was an interesting move that they picked up Harrison Bader and Renfroe from the waiver wire. Like, were they lacking experience? Is that what they're saying by bringing in those guys? Because I don't think that they're necessarily better than Will Benson that they got, and Fairchild and Friedel, etc. But maybe they're just thinking, you have experienced guys that are available, might as well snag them. Again,
Right.
I don't know. I like the young guys, though, because they're all fast. Ellie Dillon, do you realize Ellie has 24 stolen bases? Like, didn't he get called up in June or something?
Well,
How the hell do you have 24 already?
they knew he was going to be good. He was a top 5 prospect coming up, so he's playing to his talent. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
24 for the season would have been exceptional. This guy's got 24 in less games than anybody else.
right, and when he gets a full sprint, when he gets a spring training as a member of the big club, they're going to scale back all of that. You know that, right? They're going to tell him, we love the fact that you were being such an exciting player, but we're going to have you stop doing that like every single game. And another thing is we're going to have you stop trying to show up pictures and things like that, because this is where guys start having little personal vendettas and things with you.
You don't want to give the opposition any additional motivation.
Yeah.
And you're right about that. And I'll tell you what, I would understand it if they did try to limit him a little bit, because he's huge.
Right.
He's got a big frame. I mean, it's very different than Esterio Ruiz with the A's, who's leading the American League, 50-plus stolen bases. Like, that guy, his game is stealing bases. He's not a very big guy. And the reason he's in the big leagues is because he can get the fly balls and track them down, and because he can wreak havoc on the base paths. Ellie De La Cruz has so many different weapons. Speed is just one of many. And I think from the Reds' perspective, they want him to be a great base runner and to be able to stretch, instead of, going to second, going from first to third, that type of thing. I think they will take that over stealing bases and sliding and risking injury to the ankle, to the shoulder, to the elbow, getting spiked, concussion. Like, you remove all of those from the equation, if you get somebody to not slide as much into second base. Pretty simple, and when you're that big, there's a lot more body to step on. There's a lot more body to tag with your glove and give somebody a concussion. You see what I'm saying? So, Esterio Ruiz, and I'm not trying to pick on him or anything. I'm just saying, like, he can pop the slide and bounce back up, pop back up pretty quickly. When you're 6'7", 6'8", when you're like NBA height with the speed of a gazelle, yeah, you're gonna have to limit him a little bit. And I'll say one more thing about this subject matter. It's interesting to me that in these sports like NFL and MLB, when you're scouting, you're looking for the guys that are super fast and athletic and can steal a lot of bases, or the quarterback that can extend the plays and get first downs and be able to get touchdowns. But in the NFL, once you've proven that you're actually a pretty good thrower of the ball, they all of a sudden want you to stop using that same skill set that they were excited about in the first place, like Josh Allen. Oh, we don't want you to run as much anymore because he proved that he could throw the ball. Jalen Hurts, I'm sure that they're going to tell him same thing. Mahomes, they've definitely told him the same thing. You could throw the ball, so you don't need to run as much. Slide, don't go out of bounds. Go out of bounds, slide, protect yourself. Don't be a hero. So it's kind of similar. Like baseball, it's like, okay, now that you've proven you could hit and you could field, Mike Trout, stop attempting stolen base attempts. And Trout went from like a super good base stealer to like nothing. He doesn't even steal anymore when he's healthy. And yeah, they'll Ellie De La Cruz has proven that he's got other weapons. So yeah, we're gonna not have him steal bases. It just what happens in these sports. But I just laugh at the irony about their speed is what gets these guys there, and then they no longer want you to use that speed.
Yeah, but baseball is a game of patience, Mike. All about patience.
And that's a good point too, because a part of being a good base stealer is speed, of course. But there's another part of it that is more about just knowing baseball and being patient and picking your opportunities, and when to take them. That's why you find sometimes guys that aren't that fast, and when you look at their stats, they'll be like 12 for 13 and stolen base attempts. Like, man, how's he, 93% base stealer? He's not even a fast guy, but he's smart about it. He knows how to read the pitcher. He knows pitcher's tendencies. And whenever, every 10, 12 games or so, he could figure it out. He could pull one out, element of surprise. That's exactly an example of what you just said, patience.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, I know we can talk about Ellie and the Reds all day, but I have another game I need to talk about, and we got to be real quick with this one as well, too, because I got to get to talking tickets after the commercial break, because we got two games to talk about real quick. But Twins and Rangers, what are your thoughts on that? Who wins this game, and who wins the series this weekend? Big game, one first place team going against a team trying to stay in the playoff race.
I'm not impressed with the Twins, man.
Nobody is. I think I'm the only person who likes them. Everybody else is just like, why the Twins? I even got a client who just gets so mad at me because he's like, why the Twins, man? You know what's going to happen today?
Here's the thing. Pull up their stats, and you will see some mind-boggling stuff. What do I mean by that? How about, let me drop this on you. Joey Gallo has 20 home runs. Now, let me ask you a question, Pop. You've been watching baseball forever. Most of the times you have 20 home runs. How many RBIs do you have at the end of the year or at this point of the season?
You should have about 70.
70, right?
Yep.
He's got 20 home runs and 38 RBI. 38. 20 home runs. That means that they're almost all solo shots. He doesn't drive in runners. And, oh, by the way, he's batting 172. Let's move on to their other 20 home run guy, Michael Taylor. Now, I'm going to cut him a little bit of slack because he patrols a great center field. Michael Taylor is a phenomenal center fielder. He can get to anything. So he contributes on defense mightily. 20 home runs, 46 RBI. Moving on to the next guy, Kepler, 21 home runs, 50 RBI. And these guys' batting average are 172, 225, and 252 in the order that I presented them. Gallo, Taylor, and Kepler. So these guys have 60 home runs, and barely cleared 100 RBI between the three of them. They got 61 total home runs. Same thing with runs plated. Gallo's 20 home runs, 37 runs. I mean, that means like he's not even getting bases on balls and scoring.
Man.
When you have 20 home runs and you've only scored 37 runs, that pretty much means all your runs are coming from your home runs and you're just not getting on base. And then the RBI side, the story that it suggests is you're hitting a lot of solo shots and you're not driving in guys. So I don't think I've ever seen in my life 20 home runs with, 30-something RBIs. Never. It's got to be some kind of record. I have never seen it. Have you?
No. But after the show, I'll look it up and see who possibly has that record. Because I know somebody's probably out there, probably some type of pinch hitter or something. Because that's like a pinch hitter stat.
Point, but this dude ain't necessarily a pinch hitter.
Right, but he's not an everyday player either.
True.
Yeah. So, that's something that we're dealing with. And I think Gallo was hurt for a bit as well. But that's still no excuse. You shouldn't have that many home runs and that least amount of RBIs and runs as well, too. Now, our game of the day, I feel like, is going to be the Orioles and the Diamondbacks. What are your thoughts on that one?
That's a pretty cool matchup because it has, plenty of Rookie of the Year showcasing from both the American League and National League.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that these teams are young, have Rookie of the Year potential guys, and get to showcase them head to head like this. Corbin Carroll's terrific, man. He's a fun guy to watch. He's one of those good things come in small packages type of guy, and he's making every bit of his opportunity. This series, obviously Baltimore to me is a better team top to bottom. Arizona's dropped 3 in a row going into this series, which is unfortunate because they worked really hard to get back into the race. Because they started off on fire and were definitely in control of their own destiny. Then they went on a huge slump in July and early August, and they were out of it. And then they clawed their way back in. So this will probably be a really good matchup to see, where they stack up youth against youth. I don't think the Diamondbacks have a great home field advantage necessarily. And when you look at Baltimore's road record, it's really good, man. It's really, really good. The Diamondbacks are 3 games above 500 at home. 3 games above 500. The Orioles are 17 games above 500 on the road. 17 games over 500 on the road. I'm going to repeat that one more time. The Orioles are 17 games over 500 on the road. Diamondbacks, 3 games over 500 at home. Give me the Baltimore Orioles, man, all day. We're talking of the series, maybe game one. No, I don't know, but I'm saying in terms of the series, I think it's the Orioles series, and I'm going to drop two more statistics on you. The Diamondbacks plus minus run differential is in the negatives.
Right.
And in baseball, you don't get teams getting into the playoffs, with that negative stat line like that.
Right.
The Orioles, on the other hand, are plus 96. They're almost plus 100. And so, the team is legit. We'll talk more about how they stack up against like the AL West teams, because all those contenders are all above 100 runs differential wise. So they got some loaded talent over there. But in terms of this series, yeah, I think the Orioles go in and take 2 out of 3 and win the series.
All right. Sounds good, Mike. Well, we're going to do this real quick. We're going to go ahead and take our commercial break. And then when we get back, it's time to talk those tickets. So you guys stay tuned. And this is the Premier Sports Betting Show, the Primetime Angles with the one and only Pop DiBiase, the Primetime Capper.
The Viget app, where social media meets sports betting. Get the latest line movements in all major sports. Track your daily bets, daily contests, the NFL over-under contest that pays out $10K in cash prizes. This is a cutting-edge app that helps betting be easy. Sign up with the reference code POPDBIC and you will be able to watch my daily show, The Primetime Angles, as a resource to building that bankroll. Viget is available in your Apple or Google Store on your iOS or Android. The social sports betting app, Viget.
From the East and the West, you've heard others, but now you've tuned into the best. This is a Prime Wave Media production.
You help. I appreciate that.
All right, we're back. We're back. Me and Mike were still kind of talking a little bit. No, I didn't want that conversation to get out over the air. So let's go ahead, jump into talking tickets. I got to be kind of quick because I've been doing this for a little bit today. I know. Hopefully you can hear me now. Can you hear me now? Because I know I put the mic on mute.
I can hear you loud and clear, brother.
All right. You can hear me loud and clear. I got to make sure the audience can hear me because my nephew just said he can't hear me. So hopefully he hears me now. But up first, we have the WNBA mic tonight, 10-1. I'm going to go with the home team Fever plus 195. We also have the over 165.5 with the Dream and the Lynx. And then we also have the Liberty. The Liberty are a really, really good team. And I think that they will be pretty good tonight. I like the -8 on the Liberty tonight with the 10-1. So that's where we're going with that one. And late is night. And it feels all right. You know how it goes, Mike. What you call it? I was looking at a WNBA game the other day, an old WNBA game from back in 2001. Man, it was lit at Staples Center when they won that championship. The Sparks, like it was a beautiful moment. It really was. I think that's probably the most crowded game that one of the more crowded games they had for a championship as well, too. So, college football, Mike. You know, college football was crazy last night because Nebraska literally gave the game away. You know, and I would have talked about that today, but I don't like talking about games that already happened because I'm not Sports Center. So pretty much, what happens. Nebraska was bad last night. They were really good, and then they got really bad when it was time to win the game. And I couldn't believe they did that with Matt Rule as the coach. And Matt Rule is pretty good at winning those type of games. That's what made that even crazier. But if Matt Rule can get Temple to win football games, he's definitely going to get this thing fixed at Nebraska, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because, he got this. And then, they gave him a JV team over at Baylor, and he won 9 games. So let's just, Matt Rule is going to be fine. He probably needed that first loss so then he can have something to use so that team knows that they can do it, but that defense was magnificent last night. I couldn't believe they gave up 3 points for the first 3.5 quarters and then wound up giving up 10 points in the last 90 seconds of the game. Golly, it happens, but that's football, right? CFB Friday Night PK4. 11-1 over 45 Central Michigan State tonight. We also have the +16 with Miami of Ohio. Then we have the under 49.5 with Louisville and Georgia Tech. And then we wrap up with the Stanford game at -150 tonight, Mike. Stanford, everybody's taking Hawaii tonight, Mike. Real quick, why do you think they're taking Hawaii?
I couldn't tell you, man. That's kind of a mind boggler.
Mike, you've been watching football for a very long time, and every bettor always thinks that Hawaii game is some type of good action because it's always usually a plus money game. So everybody always takes that early Hawaii game feeling like they're ahead of the curve or something of that nature. I think it's just pop culture in the sense that, I'm going to because sometimes when you have a disaster in your state and in your area, everybody wants to kind of get behind your team. And I feel like that's what they're doing with Hawaii today. This is more of an emotional bet for people. And usually those don't work out. So that's why I'm taking Stanford tonight in that spot. And man, I wish we could really talk about Stanford. And real quick, though, just 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes, two quick minutes. What are your thoughts on Stanford Cal going to the ACC? I know you don't care about SMU, but what are your thoughts on Stanford Cal going to the ACC real quick?
Look, I'm very bummed about how the Pac-12 has just been ripped apart.
Yeah.
ACC, you know what it stands for?
Atlantic Coast.
What does Cal and Stanford have to do with the Atlantic Ocean?
You can say the same thing about SMU.
There you go. I mean, but you asked me about Cal and Stanford. And
right.
Those teams, they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You know what I mean? Because now that the Pac-12 is totally broken up, the Pac-12 is basically Washington State and Oregon State. I think they're like, we better get positioned somewhere so we don't get left out.
Oh, you know what was going to happen? Stanford and Cal were going to have to become independent schools and possibly had to play basketball in smaller conferences. Like I would have said, Stanford would have probably went to the WCC. Cal would have probably went there too. But Cal, as bad as their basketball team has been over the last few years, they probably could have went to the Big West. So that's kind of like where we're at right now. But it was a very bittersweet moment. But you know what though? It's just today. It's what college football is now. College football is not a local sport anymore. It's a national sport. They're going to have 4 national conferences. That's just pretty much what they said. Big 12 is going to be 2 different conferences in one. The Big 10 is going to be 2 different conferences in one. And I would say the SEC is probably going to wind up being 2 different conferences in one. Same thing goes with the ACC. What happens now, instead of having 12 teams, you got 16 teams in each one of those conferences. Now you basically got a 64-man tournament going throughout the regular season on who's going to – and this makes the best sense in the world when it comes to this playoff situation. You know what I mean? To where you can really determine the best 12 teams in the nation because wasn't nobody avoiding each other anymore. All this does, though, it just makes it really tough on the smaller schools, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, it just makes it tougher on them because now their dates are limited with those games because now UCLA, USC I think they still got to slot those days for Cal and Stanford. I still think that they got to play those Cal and Stanford rivalry games. And that's what happens is that you get out of those gimme games, those games where, it's a warm-up game. And I think college football should have got rid of that idea a long time ago. If you're not prepared to play week 1, then you shouldn't even be stepping on the field, straight up. You know what I mean? So it is what it is at the end of the day. But let me hurry up because I know Mike's all flashy and dressed up. Mike know he got something going on after this, so you better come get me if you do. So all right.
Nothing too solid, brother.
I got you. All right, so we got the Mariners this weekend winning their series, Mike. -180. I got the Guardians winning their series this weekend, a must-win series, +140. I actually got the Twins upsetting the Rangers this weekend. I just think the Rangers are just not in the right head space to be a playoff team at this point. They are another team that literally were here a little bit quicker than we thought they would be. I had a lot of high hopes for the Rangers, and you know that, Mike. You know that. I talked about the Rangers very highly. I even told Eric Burns that the Rangers, you had to watch out for the Rangers this year. And Eric Burns told me I was crazy. So, I came back to it when they were the best team in the American League for about a day or two. And I was like, yo, how you like me now, Eric? You know what I mean? He's like, well, good stuff, but, it's always good to know a brother knows some baseball. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So pretty much because, they don't see a lot of us over there, but when we come out here and give you some, when you tell a professional baseball player how it's going to be, they do leave impressed. White Sox, Tigers, that's a toss-up. I like the +115 on the home team this weekend. The Yankees are my big enchilada this weekend with the +195. I like them, and then I like the Brewers this weekend at home as well too against your Phillies. And then we got the Cardinals in a toss-em-up series against the Pirates. I like them with the -140. And I like the Diamondbacks to win this series. I know you like the Orioles. I like the Diamondbacks because the Diamondbacks have more to play for. The Orioles right now can go ahead and kind of coast a little bit and rest their situation a little bit more than the Diamondbacks. You know what I mean? So they're not in an urgency to win these games. But I know that they're going to bring their best effort. Now, when it comes down to the pick 6 tonight, Mike, we got a 59-1. I know you like that number. Brother. So we got an over 9.5 with the Cubs and the Reds. We got a +1.5 with the Guardians tonight, -110. We also have the under 8.5. I don't know why Rays and Guardians is there again, but that's not the game that I was supposed to be putting up there. And then we have the Red Sox minus 1.5, minus 120. And then we also have the Yanks money line plus 150. And then we also have the Cardinals money line minus 105 tonight. And that's going to be a 59-1 ticket. Let's see how that goes. Let's see how it checks out. And then we got the late pick 4, Mike. And it's going to be the under 12.5 with your Blue Jays and the Rockies. And then we got the Diamondbacks again tonight, plus 100 to win that game tonight. And then we also have the over 8 with the Angels and the A's. And then I ended with the Padres winning by 2 or more runs tonight with a plus 155 number on that bad boy. And that will be Talking Tickets for today's show. So, Mike, any last words before we go?
Yes. I like your ticket.
Well, that's the type of ticket you come pick me up. Let's run to Vegas real quick and see if we can do something with it. Well, it's college football tomorrow, so, that would be pretty fun. So we could go over there and put our life savings on Dion and the Buffs to cover the 20.5.
My take on early season is I
stay the hell away,
watch and kind of like figure out where these teams are headed before doing anything. But
every time, man, I'm telling you, that's how it is, Mike. But no, I'm saying every time because before we get off, I'm looking at the final race here at Saratoga. And I love this horse, Brooklyn Diamonds, in the morning. But I saw it was a claiming condition, and Linda Rice is the trainer, right? And you got to know Linda Rice pretty good. Linda Rice is not going to put one of her all-stars out there in a claiming race. You know what I mean? She's going to put out, a horse that needs to be sold today. So I said, this horse is not going to do much because they're trying to sell it. You know what I mean, Mike? And literally, it just won. And it seems like her claimers don't do anything, but they'll pop off. And, that's the one good part about betting New York races. You can bet the trainer. Some days, if a trainer has 6 horses in that 6 horses set up for the day in 6 different races, you might as well take all 6 of those trainer's horses because they're probably going to get 4 out of 6. They know. So, Mike, man, it's always a pleasure. I thank you very much. I know you were doing a lot to get to us today, and we didn't have it as organized as I wanted it to be. But that's just a pop, and that's just a Mike Abadir and Pop DiBiase show. You know what I mean? So it's just like that. So I thank you very much, man, for coming in today. Hold the line for me real quick, though, after we get done with the show, so we can wrap for a quick 5 minutes about some personal stuff. So, everybody, I'll be back Monday. We'll have a whole bunch to talk about. We're definitely going to be jumping into that LSU-FSU game. That's going to be a fun talk for us as well. Also, talking baseball, we'll have an update on how the Pennant Race is looking after this weekend. And then also we'll have some more to talk about when it comes to a little NFL news and all that good stuff, boxing news, all that. You get all the best angles here at the Primetime Angles with your boy, the one and only Pop DiBiase, the Primetime Capper. And as I always say, bet with your head, not with your heart. The movement is moving. And I am gone.
From the East and the West, you've heard others, but now you've tuned in